Good morning, Geauga County, Lake County, northeastern Ohio, part of Cuyahoga County. I think even Cuyahoga County gets to listen. Everybody out there in Streamland, Rumble, YouTube, and Facebook, good morning. You've got Jonathan Broadbent and Skip Claypool with you this morning. And we are streaming to Rumble, to Facebook, and to YouTube. Although I don't see the YouTube channel up, but we are streaming to it. In any case, good morning. If you would like to take part in the program this morning, you can call in to 440-946-9468. You can chat with us in the Rumble chat, Facebook chat, and you can email us at voiceofgeauga@gmail.com. And so we're going to talk a little bit this morning about people who don't get involved when we've got all these significant things happening and challenges around us. Both Jonathan and I tend to be very engaged and involved, and we try to make a difference. There are some who sit on the sidelines and don't really engage, and they just watch things happen. Then they like to complain about things that happen. You know, oh my goodness, the world is falling apart, and I hear this all the time. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, you know what? It comes down to you. And so I think Jonathan has a term. I'm not going to steal his term from that. But I do have a challenge. If you're out there listening and you're in Geauga County this morning and you want to help us to make a difference, we have an opportunity for you. We need to have somebody that is willing to take action by the end of today, 4 o'clock today. I'm not going to share the details over the radio with you, but we need somebody. It's everything is put together, ready to execute. We just need somebody who's willing to do this action. Jonathan and I, given a conflict of interest that we have, are not able to do this. But we're searching for a citizen in Geauga County. It has to be a citizen in Geauga County who is interested in making a difference, and it has to do with the political world and making a change in the political world. And so reach out to us at voiceofgeauga@gmail.com and say that you're willing to consider it. I need to have somebody willing to help us today and take action. Yesterday, we had 2 people who showed up at the county commissioner meeting. 2 people. I was hoping for more, but the county commissioners, Jim Dvorak and Carolyn Brakey, made a change to the public comment section to limit people's ability to provide comment. Recently, they've received a bunch of negative comments having to do with NOACA and some other things. There was a gentleman stood up yesterday on property tax and spoke out on the property tax issue. So people who are willing to do that make a difference. All the people that went to a prior commissioner meetings, and so it's been going on now for 4 or 5 weeks, and spoke up against NOACA and the article changes that they wanted to make, and the fact that we want to get out of NOACA and so forth. Apparently, Jim and Carolyn don't like it when people speak up, so they're limiting the comment period to 15 minutes to limit people's ability to, if there's 20 people there, you certainly aren't going to have 20 people speaking for 3 minutes each. And so they're trying to limit people's speech, and I encourage you to go watch the video from yesterday's commissioner meeting, because they were totally disrespectful of Ralph Spitaleri, which is very sad. Each commissioner on a board such as that have equal authority. Nobody has any more authority than anybody else. And that means that everybody gets to speak, all the board members. Nobody can limit what they say, when they can say it, and so on and so forth. And yet there was an attempt to do that yesterday. And I'll give Ralph a lot of credit for standing up and trying to represent the citizens of Geauga County, the people that voted for him anyway. So with that said, anybody who wants to get involved and help us with this little challenge that we have, it's pretty simple, straightforward, no risk involved. Please reach out to me at voiceofgeauga@gmail.com. again, we need somebody who's going to step up and is willing to take an action. So, with that said, people that get involved and make a difference, um, in order to make a change or to make positive things happen, we need people to get involved. And good.
I'm not sure that we are broadcasting. I hope that we are. Thomas, if you can hear us, let us know whether we're still on air. Hello, Thomas.
No,
Okay, so
we are streaming, and so let's go ahead and continue. I
okay,
threw it over.
yeah, no, Thomas sent a message that we're on. So picking back up where we left off, Skip, I heard my name mentioned. I'm assuming that you were preparing to flip things over to me.
I was.
I will.
Yes.
Good. I will dive right in. The word that Skip mentioned that I brought up before the show is wimp. We don't want wimps. We want action. It's all, you can sense it all across this great land of ours, this wonderful republic that we enjoy. We need people. We need people of action. And I'm sorry to be so bold, but I'm going to begin at what I believe is the beginning. There has been an attack on the masculine, on men, masculinity, for decades. And you see it everywhere. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. This whole notion, and you see it on sitcoms and TV and radio, and the illustrations of men are fat and lazy and drunk and sitting on the couch and jobless and incapable. And we've been presented for a long period of time, and I think it's affected the psyche of the American public, and men in particular, we are less capable, and that women are the ones that really actually make the decisions and rule things. And if that's the dynamic in your household, then fine, perfect, that's okay. Let's acknowledge that there has been, in my book, by design and intention, the neutering of masculinity. If you want to see more about the causes, the reasons behind that, simply look at the spread of communism in communist China. I know I'm going to go into a tangent here, but it's relevant. Bear with me a second. But at least 2 or 3 times in my lifetime, we've heard out of communist China that they're trying to rebuild masculinity, rebuild the notion of strength into their society, because they went so far to make everybody wimpy and subservient that they were struggling to try and build a military. Unfortunately, we've been on that path for a long period of time, and we have many people in our society who struggle with strength, who view it as some sort of affront to society. If you see something that is strong, and in particular, unfortunately, that includes men, you see it, I've seen it for years in school board meetings. If you go to school board meetings, typically, overwhelmingly, the people who stand up and say, hey, cut it out, you're not actually teaching our children, some of the stuff you're doing is harmful, etc., it's women. Very few men. The men who do, I applaud you. But let me ask a couple of questions. We're coming up on a break, but I'm going to challenge our audience today. If you're out there wondering why aren't those alleged pedos, the people on the Epstein list, why aren't they being arrested? Why are our schools so bad? Why are we $37 trillion in debt? Why are property taxes 30% higher? Why are small business regulations seem like they're crushing and strangling small business enterprise? Why does Wall Street keep getting away with billions in harm? That keeps happening. That's my world. Why aren't Trump's executive orders being codified? Where in the heck is the Republican Party? If you're one of those people on social media who's posting about these things, if this is in your mind, or what happened to our mandate? We sent Trump to D.C. with a mandate. Where is it? Why isn't it working? Why isn't it happening? And how are school teachers getting away with causing kids to interfere with law enforcement? And there are thousands of other questions. If you're wondering about these questions, but then you're also one of those people that is aghast at people who go into meetings and challenge the narrative and challenge the status quo, like Skip has done for years with NOACA. If you find that offensive, that Skip is some sort of rabble rouser, how dare he? He's so loud and brash. We can't have it both ways. Today, we want to delve into the strength that it's going to take to right the ship in this great republic of ours. More on the other side of the break.
Mics are off. Skip, you had froze for a second.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a YouTube thing. So, and then YouTube crashed. Or not YouTube, but Zoom. So.
All right, so I couldn't tell if it was my side or what. So I just tried to sort of keep talking.
Right. When I texted you, that Skip was frozen. I was trying to see.
There we go.
Okay, I'm disappearing. Leave y'all alone. Sorry.
Back on. So we're in a break right now. To everybody, we turned the mics back on. We were having a control room discussion, and you didn't need to listen to all that. But until we end the break, we're back on for all the people that are watching the live stream. And we're in a commercial break right now. So those who are on the live stream side will be able to hear us on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. And so I understand happy birthday is in order to Jonathan. Happy birthday, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Yep, another day around the sun. Yep. Today is my birthday.
30 years old has to feel pretty good.
Yeah, 30. I'm hitting the big 3-0. Yeah, I wish. I'm 30 plus a little bit more.
30 seconds, gentlemen. 30 seconds.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna unplug a little bit, escape for a little bit of fun today.
Good.
Find some adventure.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Voice of Geauga. Remember, you can join this conversation by dialing in 440-946-9468, and there is also a lively conversation taking place on Rumble. We are broadcasting on the podcast. This radio program is also being podcast on Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube. And speaking of masculinity and building strength, one of the key elements, one of the key things that we need to be focused on doing is building strength into the next generation. Grab kids and take them camping, take them hunting, take them out into the outdoors, because the outdoors is a great place to build strength, which brings us to Great Lakes Outdoor Supply, sponsor of this program. Grab your kids, grab your grandkids, get over to Great Lakes Outdoor Supply in Middlefield or the location in Chesterland, and check out all the cool stuff. If you are one of those people who chooses to engage in firearms activities, I do encourage training, and more training. There are great people out there who will help you and your kids and grandkids in your community to be safe with those sorts of things. Bow and arrow, crossbows, etc. You can find a lot of that stuff at Great Lakes Outdoor Supply, and use those things wisely to build strength in. So I ran through a list before we went into the break, and the thing that really is starting to more than just make me scratch my head, but it's bewildering to me. It is absolutely bewildering that the very same people, you will see them on social media, all over social media about their issue. Why were our borders open for years, and why did millions of illegal aliens pour over the border, and why don't we have medical freedom? By the way, as a side note, if anybody follows Stephanie Stock and Ohio Advocates for Medical Freedom, she is a friend of mine, and I'm working on getting her on this program. She's a fighter, absolutely. She is a brilliant Ohio fighter. Why don't we have those things? Why do we continue to be extremely disappointed with the people we elect to office? Why don't we have accountability for our elected officials? Skip mentioned some horrible behavior, from particularly Commissioner Brakey yesterday in the Geauga County Commissioners meeting. I just out of the corner of my eye, I see 4 copies of Robert's Rules of Order. I'm ready to gift wrap one and send it over as a gift to Commissioner Brakey, because when you have 3 elected officials and you step on the toes, when you interrupt and assert she is on some kind of high and mighty throne and thinks that she is more important than Commissioner Brakey, which is infuriating. And anybody that has any sense for proper decorum and how one conducts oneself in a setting where there's a board knows that that is an absolute no-no. You cannot continue to interrupt and interfere with the activities and expression of one of the members of a board anywhere, especially county commissioners. So to me, yesterday was infuriating.
Well, you know, it's even worse than that, Jonathan. Carolyn's an attorney, right? There's a Ohio Revised Code that says that you can't interfere with somebody. Actually, Ralph probably has cause for action because there is law that says all board members are equal, all board members have equal voice, so on and so forth. They represent a segment of the population. And so, you know, there's actually law that backs up that practice. As an attorney, I'm a little bit surprised. But I did want to break in. I'm sorry for interrupting, Jonathan, but to everybody in the listening audience out there, Jonathan's birthday is today, so if everybody could just scream really, really loud, happy birthday, we might be able to hear you on the radio program. We're getting a lot of chats in the chat room on Rumble.
Yeah, I expect singing.
So I'm expecting now that because it's your birthday, you'll be running over to Great Lakes Outdoor Supply and picking up a new pocket knife or, some trekking rods. What do they call those? Those little sticks you keep from falling over, because you're getting older now and you might fall over. You might want to get a couple of those little trek sticks, whatever, so you're not falling over as you're walking down the trail.
Wow, I didn't realize I was that old.
And so, you know, it happens to everybody. But anyway, happy birthday. Sorry for interrupting with that. And back on the topic at hand, I do think we did, by the way, thank you. We did get somebody who was expressed interest in helping out with a little challenge that we have. So following this program, we're going to have a conversation. And so that's the kind of thing that actually makes a real difference. If we're going to have good government, I mean, I will share a little inside baseball with everybody. Jonathan and I are both on the Republican Central Committee, and everybody has to run this year for that seat. It's an elected seat in the state of Ohio, and apparently there are some in the Republican Party that don't like how outspoken we are or what our positions are, so they've decided to run people against us in our seats. And so even within the Republican Party, we have people who don't like when people are engaged or outspoken, who take ownership and try to make a positive change. They want the status quo. They want to be able to maintain the machine that exists within whatever political district you happen to be. And when somebody pushes back on the machine, they don't like it. And so, I guess that's part of human nature and part of who we are, and part of what we're dealing with, and why we have property tax, for example. And we've got a movement to eliminate property tax. You'll see and hear. We ought to have a special program before the 25th on this, because the 25th is going to be a meeting in Bainbridge on property tax, and the establishment folks, the county auditor and some others, are going to come out and try to present a case why property tax needs to remain. But that's the challenge we have. If we want to make improvements, get rid of property tax, and make improvement on how schools are funded and townships are funded and so forth, we can do it. Just do it in a different way. If you're going to make change, you have to be involved. You have to be have conviction, speak up with confidence, and that's what some of us try to do. That's what Jonathan does, and why we're here. And those wimps out there that don't do that, you don't have a right to complain if you're sitting back and just complaining. So anyway, back to you, Jonathan. Sorry for interrupting, and happy birthday.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that, Skip. I appreciate that. So 2 things. I'm going to bring us to some sports analogies because sometimes those work. At one point during my high school years, I ran cross country, and I was never great, but I got okay at cross country. To me, it was a life lesson moment. There was one meet that I went to where I wasn't prepared. I had these, it was chilly, so these sweatpants, we all wore these matching sweatpants, and I was not prepared for the race. And suddenly the start went off, and I had my coach, an assistant coach, and a bunch of people yelling. I was supposed to be in that start. And I suddenly realized with embarrassment that I was not running, and I still had my sweatpants on. So they have these snaps down the side. I ripped them off, sat on the ground. A couple people grabbed them, and they pulled the sweatpants off. I've got shorts to run in, of course. And I took off running, and, the first leg of the journey, I had people looking at me, and I had some people rooting for our school, and I heard somebody shout out, "How does it feel to be in last place?" And that hit me. I will never unhear that. So how does it feel to be in last place? And I put more into that race than I've ever put into anything before or many things since. And I ended up with my personal best time. I had an amazing run. I exhausted myself, but I was angry and I was upset with myself, but I poured everything I could into it. My reason for bringing up that experience is that sometimes if somebody like me gets on the radio and says, "Hey, don't be a wimp," I say it out of love, and I say it out of encouragement, and I say it hoping that some people sitting on the sofa who are upset about these things in the world around us say, "Hey, you know what? Maybe I can throw my hat in the ring, and maybe I can jump in and do something." And here's another sports analogy. Skip brought up the Republican Party, and you know what? For our viewing audience, I'm going to air quote that, Republican Party, because to me, if we have a Republican Party, it needs to mean something. It needs to stand for something and actually do something, because we keep getting told that we have a 2-party system. But most people that I talk to call it the uniparty and can't see a difference. And that is not a good place to be. Well, I'm a sports fan. I grew up in Cleveland, the Indians and the Browns and the Cavs, and going to Richfield Coliseum, and I grew up a sports fan. Well, imagine, if you would, for a moment, even if you're not a sports fan, I think you'll get the analogy. We're coming up on a break. That sort of snuck up on me. When we come back from the break, I'm going to use a sports analogy to set the stage for the second half of this conversation. Remember, you can join the conversation either online on Rumble, Facebook, or YouTube, or dial in 440-946-9468. More on the other side of the break.
Okay, I kept the mics on, Jonathan, so behave. The world can listen
Microphone
to
on.
Okay.
us
Okay.
while we're on break.
So, for anybody that is watching us on social media, there is just there's a little behind the curtains glimpse, but there's about a 10-second or so lead time where we have to be silent on the mics as we come out of the radio show and go into the break. So that's just sort of a little buffer, so those radio ads can come on. And so if you see us at the end of the break, or as we're about to come back from break, just being silent on the mic, that's what you're witnessing. These are things that I never thought that I would actually learn about. So certainly, what was it, into October of last year, October, November, I didn't have any aspirations to be on the radio. I never imagined myself a radio host. But the opportunity presented itself, and it has been a tremendous learning curve ever since. A few times I've availed myself of the opportunity to give a physical and a proverbial tip of the hat to Thomas, who helps us on the soundboard. If any part of what we're able to do here comes across looking professional, it's really all thanks to Thomas, who's really led us in a very wonderful way since the beginning of December. So, Thomas, you're appreciated. Um, as far as what we do during the breaks, remember, if you have or you know of local businesses that might want to advertise, that's what's going to really keep this show going. We need to find those advertisers out there, and we're going to help them. We're going to help drive business. We have a growing and enthusiastic audience. We have a very large audience on air and a growing audience on social media. And we are pushing on all kinds of things, including that paper. There's a lot of work. I can tell you, there's a tremendous amount of work. And if you watch and you ever see a morning where Skip looks a little bit sleepy and a little bit worse for the wear, it's because Skip is putting long hours into that newspaper, trying to make it the best that we can. So these are things, these are advertising opportunities. If you know somebody out there that wants to hop in, have us bring up their local business on air, talk about it, or maybe join us as a guest, or put you where you see right now on or at least that's what I see, the break screen or audio on the break. There are all kinds of opportunities, or even a print ad in the newspaper that is slated to go out very soon and monthly from Voice of Geauga. Right, Skip?
Yep. Yeah, it is a labor of love, but it is a labor just the same. And anybody, by the way, who's listening who wants to participate in helping to produce a newspaper, we need people that will go to public events and write up stories on what they see. Let us know. You can contribute by attending a meeting that you're going to attend anyway, and either doing a video of it and or just taking notes and then writing a story about it. We also need people right now. If you're listening to this program, we need editorials.
30 seconds.
And so write us an editorial on NOACA, Breaky, what happened in the commissioner meeting. Thank Ralph Spitaleri for the great work that he's doing. Write us an editorial so we can publish that in the paper. It makes a difference. People read editorials.
10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga with Skip Claypool and myself, Jonathan Broadbent. Remember, you can dial in 440-946-9468 to join the conversation. Before we went on break, I began to set up a sports analogy. Humor me for a moment on this. Sometimes those sports analogies can be a good way of expressing a dynamic. Well, I'm a Browns fan. I like the Cleveland Browns. I grew up going to games with my dad at the old Cleveland Municipal Stadium and hoping not to be seated behind one of those pillars. So that was my childhood. Well, imagine for a moment if you're a big Browns fan and the Browns were to recruit somebody or allow somebody onto the team who is a lifelong diehard Steelers fan, and they start playing, and you notice fairly quickly that that person throws the game. They run the wrong direction. They fumble a lot. It becomes apparent that you have a a bad guy on the team. You have somebody who is not playing for the Cleveland Browns. In that sports analogy, you'd be furious and you want to get rid of that person because they are damaging the team. It's unfortunate that in this analogy, in kids' lifetimes, they haven't experienced a winning Browns team, and that's really unfortunate for my analogy. But I'm gonna carry forward anyway. Imagine if you really believe that there's potential that the Browns could win, and the Browns are playing somebody or a whole bunch of players who throw the game and just make us lose incessantly. In my book, and I've talked about it before, and it's clear, it's obvious for anybody who's willing to look at it, that we have people in the Republican Party, that supposed other party of the supposed two-party system, who are not actually Republican. We say things like rhino, and people will acknowledge that, and they just sort of give this disgruntled shrug, or they say, "Oh, that's terrible. We've got all these rhinos." Well, why tolerate that? Why, if you want a winning team, and you care about these things, if you are one of those people that elected Donald J. Trump for a reason, and you believe there's a mandate, and you believe that we should be codifying these things, and you believe that there should be strength behind our Department of Justice, why in the heck would you look to the Republican Party and just sort of shrug? And to Skip's point, locally, when we meet up, I'm currently an elected representative of the Republican Party in the county. That is, by the way, a volunteer position. I do it because I care. But when we go into these meetings, and we do, almost every meeting, there are at least a couple people who are looking at their watch and make comments like, "Oh, we've been here for an hour. Let's all just go home." Or people that make the comment like, "Why are people arguing? Oh my gosh, why? That's so. Oh, don't make a ruckus. Don't make a fuss." We cannot have it both ways. You cannot. It is not a possibility to care about these issues and care about taxes and care about Skip's favorite subject, NOACA, and their invasion. They're trying to take over and replace our local representative government. And we have people in our local government who are thrilled at that idea. They're just lavishing, just roll out the red carpet and give away our sovereignty, give away our rights as a county. Those people are, to me, infuriating. But many people view them as upsetting and infuriating. But we cannot also, at the same time, say, "Oh, well, those people, that Skip Claypool, boy, he's really ruffling some feathers. He's out there. He's a rabble rouser." Can't have it both ways. If we're going to have fighters, we're going to have fighters. We're going to, and I've been saying it for years. I even released a big piece that went out and got a lot of traction on social media. Is the right allowed to have fighters too? You see them on the left. They stump and advocate and pound on the podium. You see Nancy Pelosi and AOC and Maxine Waters and now this Mandani in New York City, and they are pounding, they're furious, and we have to have social communism or whatever their rants and raves are and everything, and they're advocating really strongly for an end of America. Why wouldn't we have people on our side that say no? And the weird thing is that on our side, we don't generally tend to scream and rant and rave. Go watch the videos of Skip. Skip is 99.5% calm, cool, collected, uses facts. Every once in a while I've seen him just get pretty hot under the collar. Actually, I like that part too. But they Skip out there saying no and asking questions is not some sort of affront to our republic. It is protection of the republic. It is working in defense of our republic. So my point in today's Voice of Geauga is, if you're one of those people out there that if you experience both of those emotions, I'm frustrated and upset about these things and what's happening in the world around us, and why aren't things getting better, and why does it feel like things are getting worse? But at the same time, you're willing to admonish and get upset at people like Skip or me when I go into commissioners' meetings, and I've done it 3 times recently. I've talked about making resolutions and taking action, and people get upset about that. To me, it's bewildering. Right? What are your thoughts on that, Skip?
So yeah, and it's interesting because I think the takeaway. By the way, we're getting some really interesting comments in the chat, and Darfe says changing the quality of our representation is much more difficult and slower than it needs to be, and that's right to some degree. I mean, it can happen quicker, but it is a slow process. So you just have to realize that it is something you have to work at, and over time make improvement to. And we have actually in Geauga County, since I moved here, we've made significant changes in leadership and in the Central Committee, and that's part of what some in the establishment don't like. We made some changes, they don't like it. But even with that said, you don't have to do as much as Jonathan and I do. We go to meetings, we do speak out. I spend a lot of time, probably my wife doesn't like it that I spend as much time I do on some of the things that I've spent my time on. She'd rather go on vacation and for me to go fishing and spend time with our grandkids and stuff. But there's all kinds of ways for people to make a difference and to be involved. And let me give you an example. We're trying to put together this newspaper. In order for the newspaper to succeed, we need people who place ads. If you're an outgoing, gregarious kind of a person and you go around, yesterday I was in 2 businesses in Chesterland. I stopped in and I said, hey, we're putting a newspaper out. Would you have any interest in advertising? It's going to go to 45,000 homes in Geauga County. That's a pretty good penetration. And so I just introduced it, asked them the question, and I got a positive response out of 2 of the businesses. If you're somebody that wants to go to a meeting and sit in a meeting anyway, go to a Chesterland Township Trustee meeting, go to the County Commissioner meeting, or watch the County Commissioner meeting online. You don't even have to go to the meeting. You can sit and have a cup of coffee and watch the meeting. After that meeting, then, write a story about what you saw. We need citizen journalists. Too often the journalists that we see, first of all, and I don't want to take any shots against them, they're trained in a particular way to write articles, but oftentimes those articles are pretty thin in terms of facts and or the depth of where they go. So you can spend time writing a more in-depth analytic article and provide more value to the readers. So the readers want to get something that's meaty, that has a lot of facts in it and so forth. So if you're the type of person that likes to write or is interested in writing, who may not even like to write, but can, and then plug what you're writing into ChatGPT because it'll make you look like a hero. There's all kinds of ways. Then you submit those articles, and in a soft, quiet way, you're helping to participate in our republic. We're not a democracy. And to defend the republic and to make positive change. And if you, for example, another way to do that is if you like what Jonathan and I are doing, what Ralph is doing, what others, support the people that are doing the things that you agree with, that you think are good things to do. Because, trust me, Jonathan and I recently took a hit in the local newspapers, and if you wrote editorials to the local newspapers defending us and what we're doing, that helps a lot. It provides cover and shield for us. And so there's lots of ways we can work together as a team to kind of move the ball forward and make positive change in a positive direction. And you don't always have to be, pounding on a desk, screaming and yelling, going to a board meeting and accusing the board of all kinds of things. You can make positive change, and oftentimes a quiet positive change, a little bit like Martin Luther King. Positive change can come through just being involved and being active and engaged. And so That's just some thoughts on that, because listening to us, you might think everybody needs to go to these meetings and make a big deal and all that. I mean, because I choose to spend time rather than watch the Browns lose every Sunday. I choose to read Ohio Revised Code on issues, or read what's going on politically and that kind of stuff that brings more value to to my life and the things that I'd like to dedicate my life to. But and you can actually, if you want to, if you're a sports fan, a Browns fan, write a story about the Browns, and we'll take it and put it in the newspaper.
Well, we can't guarantee that, but just to step in, we're coming up on a break. Remember, you can join the conversation at 440-946-9468. We will continue the conversation on the other side of the break.
So yeah, if you're wait for Thomas.
Mics are off here.
There you go. Thanks, Thomas.
Happy birthday, Jonathan. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate that.
So if you're listening out there in streaming land, by the way, if you want to be a part of our editorial team for the paper and or part of the staff in not a loose way, I mean, and not as a paid staff member, but just part of the team who wants to contribute, let us know, because we can build a team, people that we can count on, and we can talk about how we might be able to collect information and articles. We're trying to get the paper to the point where, in fact, we can have some paid staff, but that takes a little bit of time and effort, and we have to work toward that. So anyway, for everybody who's listening out there, and all the listening world out in China who is paying attention, Russia that pays attention to our streams out there, you can help us.
Oh yeah, I'm sure Xi Jinping and Putin are very, very interested in what we have to say here on Voice of Geauga.
I kind of say that in a lighthearted way, because these streams literally go to the world. And so people will, out of interest in wherever, Brazil or California or New York or wherever, might see this Voice of Geauga and say, "What the heck is that?" and then listen to a program. And so
there was it's funny you bring that up, because there was a podcast that I was invited back to. It's a roughly annual thing talking about election
30
integrity.
seconds, gentlemen, till you're back. 30 seconds.
And so a couple of weeks ago, I was invited back, and I was one of about 10 speakers, and it was a really nice list of really good speakers. I learned after the fact that was restreamed by a bunch of other podcasters and hit 8 million people live.
10 seconds. 10 seconds.
Welcome back to Voice of Geauga. We are talking today about having oomph, having a character spine, having the intestinal fortitude to stand up against bad guys and bad actors and stand for the things that you want out of life, that you care about. I went in one of just a handful of times recently. I've been encouraged to, or discovered something, and went into one of our county commissioners meetings. And it just directly, in light of our overspending, the fact that we had huge amounts of money that poured into Geauga County during, through, and as a result of COVID and big federal dollars that just got sucked up and printed and then pumped out to places like Geauga County. Well, there was huge money that came in. And what did Geauga County do? Spent it all. They just burned through it like kids on spring break in Mexico. I mean, it was ridiculous. The spending, they literally got creative in Geauga County about how to try to blow through as much money as fast as possible. And one of them that hit my radar was spending $400,000 on an office renovation for our county prosecutor. I don't think anybody in D.C. even needs a $400,000 office. And in Geauga County, you know what we need? We need a simple, basic boardroom without the big elevated, lofty throne, We don't need big Game of Thrones with sword chairs or any kind of. We don't need that. We don't need gold-plated stuff. We are a rural community, and that brings us back to ADP and their massive spend on what, like 19 employees. It's crazy. It's crazy. That's our IT department for the county, and comparable counties all over the state of Ohio have 8 to 10, maybe 12. We have 19-ish employees, some full-time, some part-time. I think all of them asked for overtime on top of their salaries. And then some of the department was billing other departments of government. It was just the Wild West of spending. If we are going to successfully rein that in, and it's a big if, it takes a bunch of us in the county to stand up and say no. And one of the first and easiest and best ways to say no is stop electing the people who conduct mayhem and just turn into these, I don't even know how to categorize it, just spending. These spend sprees are crazy insanity. But back to the point that I was making about this two-party system we supposedly have. On the Republican side, there's this attitude, and it started a long time ago, and I've ultimately come to the conclusion it was tremendously harmful. And it was this big tent mentality. The Republican Party has a quote-unquote big tent, like anybody's welcome. Well, okay, sure, let's welcome anybody. But this thing that has happened, especially in Geauga County, of somebody showing up one day, especially if they've been a liberal Democrat their entire lives, lifelong history of voting Democrat, and maybe ran for office and didn't get elected, they failed, they came up short as a Democrat candidate, and then all of a sudden they come and knock on the door of the Republican Party and say, hey, today I'm a Republican. Will you support me in running for office? I think the answer, going back a decade, if I had a time machine to undo what's been done, the answer is no. The answer is absolutely no. You're welcome to join the Republican Party, but you're on probation for some years until we can determine your value system. This thing that we've done, and it's actually, unfortunately for Geauga County, gotten even worse. We've had some very high-level people within the Republican Party who actually literally go on social media and in print media and ask for Democrat votes on Republican ballots. That's happened, and that it takes a tremendous amount of weakness to allow to continue to happen. So I'm one of those people who is that Browns fan who's willing to continue pointing at the undercover, the Steelers player, using my earlier analogy, who is intentionally throwing the game. Those are people that are destroying the brand, the winnability, and the reputation of the Browns. If we want to have a solid, actual, functional Republican Party, we're going to have to insist to make it happen. We're going to have to stand up, and that means being vilified and being cast as some sort of rabble-rouser, and that's fine. I guess that's my plight in life, and Skip and a bunch of people like us. But I'm not satisfied with a bunch of people that I'm supposed to pretend are actually Republican. I can literally look at their voting record, and I can see big smiling pictures of them with, I mean, they look like, they're shaking hands with AOC and Nancy MacArthur, or Nancy MacArthur popped into my head because she was the former chair of the Geauga GOP, but AOC and Maxine Waters and all the far left, lifelong liberal Democrats, and they're achieving office in Geauga County, and they shouldn't be. These are people that we need to have on the spotlight, and we need to work as a county together to create a stronger brand and voting track record and platform of the Republican Party if we're going to have a two-party system. What do you think, Skip?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's constant work. I mean, we have a governor right now that I would say is a very weak-kneed Republican. I've not been happy with Mike DeWine. I saw him through the COVID experience. I didn't really care for him too much as a senator when he was a senator. I worked on his campaign at one time, and I was not impressed. So, and we've got a congressman right now that, my goodness, there's some of the votes that he takes, the January 6th vote that he took to set up a committee, and some of the other things that he does sometimes are very questionable. Sometimes he votes well and votes with the Republican Party. But we have these people that are very wishy-washy, and they are able to exist because we allow them to exist. This is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And so people have to be willing to, at the very least, stand up and be recognized and say, yeah, no, that's not behavior we want, or we want you to make a change. I'll say if enough of us wrote to our congressman, if there was a groundswell of input, that would influence his decision process. Same thing with the state level. Right now, and I don't want to beat up too much on our congressman, but same thing happens at the state level. We elect some people we have confidence in, we think they're good people, and then we have this property tax initiative that comes up, and we get no support for it, and or they make some feeble attempt to change property tax, how it's handled at the state level, to try and distract us from the initiative to get rid of property tax. And so, it's an ongoing process where we have to stay engaged and communicate to our representatives. It's a republic. They represent us. The only way they know how to represent us is if we tell them what we think. And so people of all different viewpoints will contact them, and they hopefully will tend to lean in the direction where they get the majority of input. And so that's a double-sided sword, because sometimes Republicans or conservatives tend to stand down and not be too communicative. They tend to be working and taking care of their families and stuff, so they don't call in, and so therefore things get distorted. But that's part of what we're dealing with. We live in a world of human beings, and human beings have frailties, and we do the best that we can to strive for nirvana, the best outcomes, a perfect world, and sometimes we succeed in moving in that direction. Sometimes we don't, but we can always keep
all
up.
Flawed individuals. We are sorry to step on your toes there,
No
Skip.
problem.
We're coming up on a conclusion. I'm going to put out there perhaps the most important gem of the day, and that is who controls endorsements controls elections. Everybody knows it in politics. If you are or become a voting member of the Republican Party, you can help shape endorsements. That's key to getting rid of the bad guys. And with that, we are coming to the conclusion of this show. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you Monday.